All right, team, it's a couple minutes after the hour. Welcome to the October 5th edition of the Education SIG. We have a couple exciting things to talk about today. Please mark your attendance in the agenda. If you have any opens, please add those below the agenda section. And first off, as is tradition, do we have any new friends that wanted to introduce themselves to the group and say hello? All right. Do we have anyone that's interested in helping take notes? Critical part. More important, I think the most important role of the day. Helping
I can jump in on that.
Awesome. Thank you, Kara. Thank you, Dave. Everyone's welcome. But I say it's most important because we do have a lot of people that are interested in this group, and people do flip back if they miss a call and look through the meeting notes. So they are very helpful to those that don't show up. All right. I will continue to stall for time while our subsection leaders enter their information into the plan updates. If anyone has any additional opens, please go ahead and add those. Today, we're going to talk about some updates on our little glossary sub-project. I've set a goal for us. I would love it if we can have the revisions to the plan done by the 1st of December. That way we can get that in front of the governing board before the end of the year. That gives us just under 2 months to finish our revisions. And hopefully that means we can get started on actual education stuff more quickly. And then we'll talk about the spreadsheet. So now I will turn it over to our sub-team leaders. We'll start off with Dave Rousseau. Do you want to give us just a brief update on how section 1 is doing? And do you think December 1st is an awesome date you'll get done by?
I think December 1st is an awesome target date for us to strive for. We'll see what we can do. I'll get some links in the update that I'm typing in right now momentarily. But last meeting, we talked a lot more in depth about goal 1.1, which is reviewing existing educational materials that are out there and how we're going to collect this information and organize it. And then subsequently, we're going to plan to do a survey to determine what might be missing or what we might need to focus on. So we figured out some dependencies. We added some additional milestones. We have a document here, and again, I'll have the link momentarily, that we are using to collect any generally publicly available materials that are out there. So I ask everybody to continue to solicit your friends, your family, your pets, whoever might know this information, put it into that working document. We also put a spreadsheet together. Crow put a spreadsheet together we're using to help figure out what the organization is.
We did.
The team is contributing to the whole thing. But Crow put a lot of effort in putting that initial spreadsheet together. I want to thank him personally.
Hundreds of hours.
And in all seriousness, we were trying to figure out the best way to organize and categorize the materials that are out there once we have them identified. This is going to be vital for us as we're going through specifics in the plans to figure out what kind of training is available, where to point people for specific types of training, and ultimately what the level of trainee might be appropriate for certain material, what might be missing. So we're putting all that information together. We talked very preliminarily about the survey and some stuff we want to touch on, but that's a little bit of a later piece of the effort. So again, the current tasks that we've got going around the content, around the organization, and how we're going to take the next steps once we get that information together.
And we will all have the opportunity to look at this amazingly, lovingly handcrafted piece of spreadsheetery here in a little bit. Any questions or comments for Dave? All righty. I see our friend Glenn hurriedly typing things in, but I don't see. Oh, there he is. We'll wait. Say his name and he appears. Hello, Glenn. Would you like to share your updates on section 2? of the plan?
Hi, everybody.
Timing.
Yeah, I think it would be best if Randall give a brief update because I wasn't present in the last one due to circumstances. I saw we updated the calendar notion correctly because I was really confused, so I couldn't be there. So Randall, would you be so kind to give a small update about it?
Sure. I actually typed in those things, Crob, because
Oh, it
Glenn
wasn't
wasn't
Glenn
here.
like telepathically sending
No,
waves
I was
out?
messaging Glenn to let him know. So yeah, I was multitasking. But we have some interesting stuff going on in SKF. We're doing kind of preparing SKF to be at the level where we can like mess with it and add more stuff to it. So we're kind of dealing with the stuff that we have now. We're talking about doing a back-end redesign in Knative, and also we've been gathering some designers to do a front-end redesign. I know Eric volunteered someone from YPro. I know my wife volunteered as well, and I think we have another person from LF that might be involved, which we talked about, Crob, Cassidy, and also Anthony. So we have 4 people on the front end redesign, and so far we have about 5 people in the developers that I've been able to gather out of my doings. And then the next part, we've been really trying to clarify like what our goals are for and what our expectations are with SKF, because SKF is a great big platform. So we've been kind of trying to clarify that so that we can use that something as like our guiding principle in this redesign. So yeah, basically that's as far as section 2, what we discussed.
Awesome. Any questions or comments for Glenn or Randall?
Yeah,
Or anybody that wants to volunteer.
yeah, Randall, has the DTO reached out to you yet?
No, he's not.
Okay, I gave him all your information. He sounded interested. I'm actually in London this week, so I'm kind of having a harder time keeping my time zones correct. So I'll make sure I touch base with him when I get back Monday.
I appreciate it, Eric. Really do.
Yeah.
And I'll ask Glenn and Randall the same question I asked Mr. Rousseau. Do we think we can have the plan refined and fleshed out by December 1st so that we can get that presented to the governing board? And that doesn't stop any work on SKF or any surveys or anything else, but can we get the plan written out by December?
The plan for the redesign should be done, I would say, in the next 2 weeks. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get ahead of OpenSSF. So by the time OpenSSF comes with their list of requirements of what they want to do to SKF, it's not a big deal. So my question, Crob, is, so do you want like the plan of the redesign and the SKF plan, or do you like, what do you need for your plan?
I need our proposal of a rewrite of the foundation's mobilization plan, stream 1, done by December 1st. Now we can have a line item saying SKF enhancements and have a swag for resource needs and a time estimate. That's fine. I don't need the SKF plan in detail, but I need something to give the governing board before the end of the year so that we can know if we're going to get funding or if they require any changes.
Fair. I think it's possible, but I think Glenn and I would need to talk, but I think it's very possible.
Yeah. And it's the conversation you and I had with Art the other day for the other SIG. It's, I need to have the milestones laid out and again, those estimates for any resources or time or costs.
Got it.
And again, that doesn't hinder if people actually want to start working. That's awesome. We can do all this in parallel, but I need to have that physical document, to print out and hand to Mr. Bellendorf here.
Yeah. Right on. I got you.
All right. Did Sal join us? Curses. I will
In the
Yes.
meantime, yeah, sorry, one more thing that I
Please.
want to raise. Because of course, we're also heavily dependent in SIG2, not only about the work they want to do in SKF and all that good stuff, but also about the materials, right? I know, Randall, you've been busy doing a sort of gap analysis and based on what we should derive the materials on the web API and all the good stuff. But I think that was also a bit tied together with the SIG1, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and based on that outcome as well, we can actually start putting in the milestones and do an proper estimate. So yeah.
We'll start that in about 10 minutes. I will tell you, you will not have 100% accurate list of everything to do. So I'm going to need you to provide an estimate as best we can. And then with the understanding, we may need to pivot. We may need to come back for a secondary request once we have mostly complete knowledge.
Maybe another question as well. Is it allowed in the milestone definition to, for example, define, I don't know, 15% or 20% unknown? Like, hey, this is what we think it should be, but we would like to have a bit more because, you know, the material and the content can actually, be more than we actually chewed on.
Yes. Yeah, and we also could put things into year 2. Like, for example, we can say we're going to commit to doing 20 new labs in 2023. And even though we might have 200 items to do, and then we could say in 2024, we would commit to X amount.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. That helps. Thanks.
Yeah. So, put something you're comfortable with that you think you can achieve. And, we already kind of know some things we need to do. So, definitely kind of scope that out, and then we can figure out the year 2, year 3, and beyond. Christine. Question, Christine.
I was wondering, is there like a template for what the plan should look like? Should it look like the original one that we had gone through in detail, just fleshed out a lot more?
It is going to look like a combination, the child of that and what we have in Git. So my intention is to take some of the pros from the plan, potentially change that. And that's something that I'll probably set up a call with the working group lead, the stream leads to do the pros. And then we will take these GitHub sections and recombine them into one document.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome. Any additional questions? All right, and I will send a note out to Sal after this, asking for an update on stream 3. So let's talk about the glossary, and then we'll talk about this spreadsheet that Glenn and David alluded to. Is anyone here able to talk about what's been going on with the glossary?
I can.
Cool.
So Avishai made a PR. He already started transferring some stuff over. I was helping him with some of that. I still have to add mine. I'll probably do that today, actually. But yeah, anyway, so he has a PR. It's available for anyone to review. If you want to add to it, we're using Avishai's fork on his GitHub as kind of upstream, so it all goes into the same PR. And yeah, I would encourage everyone to take a look at it.
I'm putting a link to that PR into the agenda. It is PR 22 in our repo. Dan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Sneak would like to participate in this. We're very keen to get involved more heavily. We're definitely going to take a look at this PR. We have a bunch of material that we can contribute. My colleague Michael is on the line as well, and he's working specifically in the developer education kind of part of the business, and so yeah, like, where is this, how is this work being organized, I guess is my question, because I didn't know there was a PR up until Randall said there's a PR. So is it happening on the mailing list? Is it happening in Slack? Is there a subgroup that's meeting to talk about glossary? How can we best engage?
So as of right meow, I would strongly encourage the group to do all their collaboration through PR22. That way everybody can see all the actions going on. Randall, I don't know how you all have self-organized. This is a task I haven't had time to have a lot of involvement in.
Well,
yet,
I just started a group. I just started a group chat with Abhishek. And yeah, we just what we did is we ended up splitting up like organizations. But Dan, we could right now it's all being organized in Avishay's like fork of the SIG repo or working group repo. But it's all being organized on Slack is also, yeah.
It's on Slack. So on the OpenSSF Slack.
Yeah, but
Can we put it in a public chat instead, or in a public channel as opposed to a DM?
Yes,
thing?
I will.
Okay.
I will most definitely do that.
And
Okay.
I might suggest send a note to both the mailing list and the Slack channel for both this SIG and the working group, kind of a call for participation. So it sounds like you've got some folks that are motivated and interested in contributing.
Yep. Will do. And I will communicate with Abhishek, who is not available this week.
And then we had this issue got brought up as part of the vulnerability disclosures working group, where we wrote a document and we had a list of items we needed to define. And then I'll get to you in a second, Dave. And then this group decided they would take on that work to try to cultivate the list. I had a conversation with the TAC yesterday, and the TAC agreed that things like a foundation-wide glossary, dictionary, lexicon, and also things like personas impact multiple working groups and work streams within the foundation. So they have agreed to create a centralized repository. So once we are ready, we can transfer any work we do into a future foundation-wide repository instead of it being squirreled away inside this SIG. So it'd be kind of a top-level repo potentially. Let me go to Mr. Rousseau first, and then Randall.
Is there an expectation as to when this should be done? Is there a date in mind anybody has as far as getting this wrapped up?
I don't have an expectation. I don't see it as a blocker for us necessarily, for this group necessarily. I think we're going to need to have, once we get our education and cybersecurity things in there, and we get the vulnerability team to get the CVD things in there, I think we need to go approach the other working groups, like supply chain, for example. They have specific terms and meanings, and we want to reach out to them. So I don't have a timeline. If the little group that gets together and has this exciting group of cadre of contributors wants to put a date for themselves, I'm glad to help enable and facilitate that. Randall.
I think the goal that Avishai and I had, for the record, Dave, was 2 weeks from now to have it all completed, at least the first draft. So we're just copying and pasting and putting the links in. So it's not like it's a whole bunch of work, you know. Yeah. And what I was gonna say, Krob, was could it be possible? Maybe not now. I don't know. It might be now. It might be good. But in the spirit of what Dan said, setting up a Slack channel for glossary, maybe.
Anything's possible. It's open source, Randall. If you dream it, we can make it.
Well,
reality.
Slack isn't. Yeah.
I will send a note to Jory, although she and Brian are traveling this week, and it sounds like the other support person, Jennifer, is out on maternity leave, and then the other
It's
dude,
all good.
Khalil.
We can start on
I'll
ours.
send it.
Just-
I'll start it, and yes, we will have a Slack channel dedicated to this, and we will figure out a way to get cross foundation contribution to it as well.
Cool.
We'll start off with a little kernel here, and then it'll blossom into a beautiful open source flower.
Fair.
Cool. Let me, so I don't forget. Operations. And I would strongly suggest one of the first things this little team comes up with is a name. We've used glossary, dictionary, lexicon, encyclopedia. So I would suggest you have an opinion on what you would like to call it before we make the repo and start to get other folks in.
Would it be wiser perhaps to maybe start splitting this up into folders? Because or do we want like one large page, or does anyone have opinions on that?
I don't have time to actively contribute, so therefore I don't have an opinion.
Fair. I just see it getting like, cause I know we have like application security, and then we have like network security, and then we have like containers, which is the whole thing. So I figure that might be better if we had folders, like one for application security, one for like different things, but I don't know how I would structure that. I'm just saying that from like a final product level, having one large thing. Dave, do you have input?
I do as Crow pages
My
through
dictionary doesn't have folders.
I think, and I also agree with Crow. I have not had a chance to contribute, so my opinion is what it is. But I think whatever it is, it needs to be searchable, easily searchable.
Right.
And I think if you start breaking things up into folders, you're going to have terms that are going to apply to more than one of those folders. And we don't
That's
want to
true.
have multiple occurrences of the same term in the dictionary. So maybe tag things for what we were talking about doing folders. There's it should be easily searchable. Someone can go in, type in a term, and find the approved definition of it very easily, in my opinion.
An index search makes sense.
Len?
Fair.
Yeah, well, indeed, I would say separating the things and like make a specific category and folders makes sense. I do see the worry. But I assume also that, for example, what we will put into Git will not be the real searchable representation of the data that we're going to offer, right? It's just for us easy, to make commitments to do new stuff. So I don't see really an issue with splitting it up into folders.
Mm.
As it's not going to be the view anyway, where we present the data and the searchability, etc.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So my weigh in on that would be that I would try as hard as possible to do it one way, so it's exportable if we put it into another platform. So it's a lot easier to just run with it rather than doing it one way, because it may not be fully searchable now, but if we do it in XML and tag it or YAML or some other format, or just however we want to do it, and then maybe it ends up in a index search tool down the road. So yeah, I mean, just let's avoid any rework if we can.
Agreed.
And
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'll take a look at it tomorrow when I have some time, and I'll see if I can contribute as well.
That'd be great. I was gonna say, if we put it in Markdown, we could have the GitHub preview, but that definitely affects searchability, because the only way to be able to search it is GitHub. So I do think that it'd be very easy to make like a 1-page type thing with just a search bar, and you put in your term and it comes out with a definition. It wouldn't be that hard to put something like that together.
Dan, and then Glenn.
I just wanted to suggest the important thing is the content. And even if it's just one markdown file, glossary.md, that is reasonably uniform in its formatting, then it is easily parsable by scripts and you can move it into different kinds of things. And that's my suggestion rather than figuring out which color to paint the shed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Glenn.
And I have made search engines for markdown before.
Yeah, I just wanted to say indeed to contribute a bit on what Randall was saying, that you know, we actually also played with the idea from a single website, also in SKF, where you can make new suggestions actually, where you have an automatic GitHub pull request system. So you can add a new glossary item to it, which creates underwater a PR into our repo. And indeed, one big ass glossary MD file sounds awesome, but you know, let's put that in the CI/CD pipeline of GitHub, where it auto generates a file like that based on all the separate categories. I mean, it's way easier to do PRs, add new stuff to it, etc. than yeah, trying to work in one big ass file. It's my experience so far working with MD files. But yeah, just my 2 cents.
So it sounds like
Agreed.
there's a lot of interest around this, and we probably need to set up, you know, a subcommittee or a working group. So
Agreed.
if I could get, maybe Randall, since you're the tacit ringleader of this, if you could send a message out to the mailing list today for this SIG and ask for opinions on a name, and maybe give a due date by Friday. We can, I'll send a note out to Jory to get a Slack channel set up so that we can start to organize around this particular task. And 2 pieces of guidance I would give this group is watch out and try to avoid situations where you're going to introduce rework or a ton of additional future maintenance. So try to avoid situations where you're going to have somebody, you know, that's their job to kind of caretake a file for a while. And then I forgot wherever possible, we don't want to be the author of these definitions. There are many great places that already have authoritative definitions: NIST, ISO, OWASP, IEEE. So wherever possible, leverage somebody's work. And if we need to make an adjustment to that, we can note, you know, this is what IEEE says about this term, and here is how we have modified that for our working definition.
What we're currently doing is we're trying to merge definitions and put links in.
Yeah.
Of where we took it from.
The more things we write ourselves, the more maintenance.
We kind of got to that.
Occur.
We got to how the merging is going to be a problem. So this is what I was going to ask though. So would it be better to just maybe copy definitions, and because we've decided that we're going to need like a way of searching and displaying, which is not difficult, but maybe when you put, for example, Finder, because that was one of the terms we have in there, you get what, for example, you know, Sneak defines as Finder, or what Red Hat defines as Finder, and you just get all those like in a table. Would that sound better to you guys? Or what would, I think, yeah. Or maybe that's something that we got to figure out in the SIG.
Yeah. And again, we can pivot, we can change in the future, but I would again think about the technical debt we're incurring by authoring things ourselves.
Agreed. Okay, fair.
And we want to make sure that this is an artifact that survives all of us into, you know, the community. So we don't want to.
Right.
Well, that was unexpected. Any additional thoughts on the glossolexicon area?
Or taxonomy.
Or taxonomy, yep. billion different names. All right. I think we have talked through that enough. I would like to draw your attention. I posted a link in the Get into our Zoom chat. It's also the last bullet on the agenda. This is our collateral collection spreadsheet. I don't need this finalized today, but I would like everybody's feedback on the matrix tab and the XREF tab. So the matrix tab is once we agree on how this is organized, what information we want to share, several of us are going to go through and take Randall's SKF analysis, Wheeler's fundamental class, and then Dave has an exhaustive Word doc of sources. So once we agree upon what information we want, we'll start to load all that into this spreadsheet so we can start to do that inventory and understand what our current assets are. And then we can do the gap assessment of where we might need to invest in future content. So think about, or provide me opinions now, what columns you'd like to see. So right now we're listing the source, what type of content it is. Is it a class? Is it a website? Is it a blog? We're going to do, is it related to a stack or language? What's the overall theme, like cryptography or threat modeling or endpoint security, that type of deal. We're going to list the learner level, like this training or this artifact is targeted towards beginners or intermediate people or experts. And all of that, all of those little drop downs are sourced by the XREF tab. So once we agree upon what columns, how we'd like to organize it, I need to get an accurate representation of how we would like to organize that as shown in the XREF tab. Christine.
This is a comment on the XREF tag. Perhaps you could maybe explain a little more what are the differences between some of the content types, because some of them might feel the same, like presentation or conference talks, hands-on labs, interactive courses and labs. So either might help to get an idea of what each of them means to you.
So right now it is a combination of 4 things I wrote down and then contributions from the substream 1, suggestions people have had. So I have not gone through and vetted or normalized things yet. So if you feel that things are duplicative, put a comment or change it. This is not the finalized list yet, but I need to get this finalized before we start cramming and categorizing things into the first sheet. So please, please, please provide me that feedback around these columns. And we probably, yes, need to define what we mean by a class, what we mean by a conference talk, for example. David.
So just to reinforce what you said, our next section meeting is Thursday, October 13th. So any feedback that anyone would like to contribute, please have it done before that time, because we are planning on making final decisions and moving forward with this at that meeting.
This is all stuff I've pulled out of the air or through sources that I have used in the past. And then Judy Kelly from Red Hat has been contributing a lot of ideas. So again, if anyone has anything, either directly type it in, feel free to change it, or if you're hesitant to change it, put it as a comment. I feel this is confusing or is duplicative of something else. Randall.
I kind of wanted to just say, so I think that with like the back end, the intention that we've been leaning towards is having something where that supplies all the information, like, so you can integrate it however way you want. So to give people, so like, yeah, that's kind of how I think it'll all kind of come together, because we host a lot of information at SKF, and I know that we're going to be adding a lot of information as well. So I just wanted to like point that out, as far as that's what I think the intent is.
The intent of this spreadsheet is to get an inventory of what is available, evaluate what we need to do with that. You know, can we incorporate it into existing materials? Can we just wholesale use it? Or do we need to create, do we have gaps we have material in? So this is something, a tool we're going to use to make decisions on future course content, whether it's updating David's class, or it's making podcasts, or going to conferences. We just kind of need to decide, we need to start to evaluate what we have. There's a lot of stuff that exists, and there's going to be stuff that there's going to be gaps that we have to create ourselves or rewrite. Did that clarify that for you?
It did, but what I was getting more at is, so like when I talked to David was talking about how are we going to break this down, because that relates to the spreadsheet. Because like your matrix spreadsheet would somewhat suggest that you're tracking things by course, which kind of gets somewhat difficult, because then you have things like the OSWAP testing course, which fulfills multiple like roles, or goes through multiple industries, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So I am not targeting a specific course yet. That would be a future.
No, I'm not talking about a specific course. I'm saying that you're tracking things. Like you would list this, so like as an entire course in your matrix, correct?
That is up for conversation. And if you have a better way of displaying that or sharing, kind of categorizing that information, I welcome that feedback.
I'm just saying, because that was one of the things of why, like with SKF, it's hard, because like, for example, we have all these labs, and each lab is like a self-contained thing there. You could say it's its own thing. So, yeah.
So I don't want to spend the next 6 months defining the list. We have to start taking action. So this is a first stab at trying to roughly containerize these things so that we can start to understand how we want to move forward. So if we just list SKF and it's a hands-on lab, that's probably good enough for now. And then if we need to refine in the future, we definitely can pivot. Glenn, and then I don't know.
But that's what I did. But then it gets more difficult though when you get like David's course though, because David's course covers several topics. That's why. That's what I was trying to point out.
I am aware. Glenn.
Okay. Yeah, no, so I'm indeed looking at the XREF and, for example, the content team. And I must say, I see indeed a couple, for example, the same type of categories that the ASVS is also addressing in terms of security requirements. So that was also my idea in terms of content team, like, yeah, what should be there in scope? And if I look at our list, okay, it goes a bit more in depth in some areas. Like, for example, penetration testing in the ASVS, there's no requirements about that. Of course, you have there the testing guide from OWASP. That is the facto standard that every pen test company use for how to define a pen test and what you check for. But is it indeed an idea to extend this content team, for example, also the same categories the ASVS has?
If that makes sense and speeds up our velocity, I would be all for that. This is not the definitive, these are not decided. Again, there's a lot of duplication. This is a first pass, and I need this group's feedback to make it what we want.
Exactly. Okay.
So if ASVS is the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it feels a bit like we're reinventing the wheel for the content team. Because I see indeed a lot of items here that are directly also, for example, in the ASVS. So then I would say, hey, if we really want to cover from A to Z, let's use the category items from the ASVS, because yeah, that's what people the past, I don't know, 10 years been thinking about, what should be in there. So I think using that as a guide, and then also for a gap analysis would be good. And indeed, like Randall saying, we can correlate them. Hey, these actually, we have material for David available. Here we have labs that we can connect, blah, blah, blah. I think we doing it a bit more correcter in terms of completeness if we add those as well, in my opinion.
I think that's a great suggestion. I would either drop the ASVS categories into that column or put a suggestion in Dave's meeting agenda. I think that's great. Again, this is a first pass and we're trying to define it so we can move forward. And if ASVS, we can reuse, I would, again, always reuse where we can.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah,
It's one of the core architectural principles.
I will add them in, and then that SIG can decide what to do with it or not. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Glenn. Arnaud.
Yes, hi. I mean, I'm sorry if this is stupid, but I'm still trying to figure out what the criteria, what does it take for some content to qualify? And I'll be honest, I mean, we have a lot of content at IBM. We have a lot of education material in the security space. But at the same time, I don't think, I don't know that we'll be able to just contribute the whole content for the group to reuse as is and do whatever they want with it. So should that be listed? Should I put pointers to it or what? I mean,
so we haven't defined the criteria yet, Arnaud. We're just kind of, we're casting a very wide net. What things are we aware of that are potential resources? Some of these things we might ask, I am in conversations with the Intel training people about Intel donating some of our secure development content. I know that Jeff has taken a similar path within IBM, but worst case, the group might be able to see that content. So it's shared with us that we could look at it and then, write our own if there are gaps potentially. So if it is an asset we think we could realistically use, let's get it on the list. And then we can kind of, once we get there, we can understand kind of what the licensing is and how we can reuse. But if you think it adds value, let's get it written down so that we can have a task in the future to look at it.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Rousseau.
So for Glenn, specifically, I see he's typing stuff in. If you could also drop a comment about where you got this from and why you think it might be a better course of action to go with those categories, that'll be good context for us when we take a look at it. But at risk of beating this dead horse even more, this is all about right now how we're going to organize this. That's all we're trying to figure out. So please feel free. Let us know what your thoughts are, what you think the best way to handle this is. It doesn't mean it's going to be set in stone, but this is how we're going to proceed moving forward initially. We have to figure out a way to organize and categorize this material so we can then do all these other cool things with that we want to do down the road.
Yeah, like this is maybe not a blocker, but certainly is a dependency for the whole subsection 2.
Yeah.
So the sooner we get this worked out, the quicker we can actually start to do section 2 stuff. Randall.
So what ASVS is, it's basically like a curriculum of what you should do. So I think what Glenn is saying, and I agree with this, and this is what he's saying, that perhaps we should develop somewhat of a curriculum before we actually start evaluating like whole subject matters, because also tying in with what Arnaud was saying was if like ASVS has specific requirements that you need to fit that they're very well elaborated. There's actually like an OSWAP working group that's specific to ASVF. So like basically we can take things, and I actually would even argue it would be easier to address the content if we actually had like a curriculum that we have to address, if that makes sense. Because it's really hard. Like that's what I ran into already in organizing SKF, is that when you start to mobilize the courses as entire courses, it becomes a lot more difficult because there's a lot of overlap.
Organizing things are hard.
Yeah.
Almost as hard as computers.
So I don't know if you want to talk about that, Dave, maybe in your working group, because I would argue that makes sense to me, to like have an actual curriculum?
I not at all disagree with anything you guys are saying. I appreciate you advocating for this. We are open to any and all suggestions at this point. If we decide that we want to have a more in-depth conversation specifically about this, based on the additional feedback we get back, I will be happy to invite you and Glenn, anybody else to come and talk with the team about this and help us understand the perspective that you're bringing. Because it certainly sounds like it makes sense. And we should definitely consider it as one of the suggestions moving forward.
Fair.
Right. Any additional, Kara?
Just on that topic of curriculum, I've been attending meetings for a couple months now, but I'm not sure if before that point, were there discussions about specific learning goals? Like you can't create a curriculum until you know what the learning goals are. And no, okay, so that hasn't been
yet.
discussed.
We would
Okay.
love to start doing that.
Well,
Okay.
let me say there was, I believe, and Glenn can inform us more. I believe that OSWAP did have those meetings, but like, yeah, like OSWAP has it, like it's been around for a while, so it's kind of become like this behemoth of like knowledge. So, and especially right now, as it relates all to application security for the most part. So anything else, there mobile is covered to some degree, but anything else, basically like IoT was pointed out, that's the type of thing that we would probably be looking to add, I would assume, like year 2.
So to Kara's question, other groups may have done that. This particular effort has not done that yet, and I think that is something excellent. We probably need to get written into the plan, and that might be a section 1 thing, since it appears to be rather fundamental to before we start doing things. We want to make sure we have some objectives we're trying to achieve first. Any additional thoughts or comments about this or anything we talked about today? Kara?
So I just had one more thing on that.
Please,
If we're thinking about learning goals, have we discussed where the potential audience is starting, what sort of knowledge we assume they have, what knowledge we assume they don't have? Presumably we're going to have multiple potential audiences. Has any of that been defined yet?
Well, you missed that fun conversation months back. The answer is kinda. So in general, that if you're looking at the XREF tab, we have a target audience that generally is kind of a persona we're targeting. We don't have those fully defined yet or fleshed out, but those are generally the categories of people we think we're going to target that we'll need to tailor content for. And then we have the learner level. We know that we're going to have content at a basic, intermediate, and expert level, but we haven't yet to segregate that.
Okay, sorry, I missed that
Kinda.
column. The only thing I would add to that, if it hasn't been done already, is laying out explicitly what do we expect a university level student to know up to, what is their starting point and what do we expect that they don't know? Just laying that out will help.
I agree. And if you have any thoughts, we would love those. Because again, we talked about defining these personas. So there's definitely more work that needs to be done to kind of frame a lot of this.
One thing to also point out for the ASGS, it works actually with levels, level 1, 2, 3, beginner, intermediate, expert. So that, would also be a good fit, right? Makes sense.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Indeed. Good observation. Oh no, where'd all Glenn's stuff go?
I moved it a bit to the side. I didn't want to pollute the pull down.
Oh, okay.
So it's still there. Yeah. I also added the testing guide for the other topics that I saw that have overlap.
Groovy. Groovy. A lot to talk about in your call, Dave. All right, any additional comments? Very productive call today. I appreciate the participation and the ideas. I look forward to our dictionary team starting to coalesce. And as you have thoughts, please share them in Slack or the mailing list. We'll see everybody in this forum in 2 weeks. Thank you all. Have a great day.